What's happening right now was already written in Revelation. There comes a moment in every generation when people begin to feel something they cannot fully explain, a quiet pressure in the air, a strange heaviness in the heart, a sense that the world is moving faster than it should, yet somehow going nowhere at all. You feel it when you wake up in the morning and scroll through the news. You feel it when you hear about wars, rumors of wars, division, confusion, fear and exhaustion spreading everywhere. You feel it when people who once believed in everything suddenly believe in nothing. And deep down, whether you can explain it or not, a question begins to form inside you. What is happening to the world? The answer, as unsettling as it may sound, is that what is happening right now was already written long ago, not in vague predictions or symbolic poetry meant to confuse, but in a revelation meant to awaken. The book of Revelation was never written to terrify humanity. It was written to prepare those who are willing to see. And what makes this moment so intense is not that prophecy is being fulfilled, but that people are finally starting to notice it. Revelation is not a book about the end of the world in the way movies portray it. It is a spiritual unveiling. The word revelation itself comes from the Greek apocalypsis, meaning to uncover, to reveal, or to remove the veil. It was never meant to predict dates or scare people into panic. It was meant to describe a pattern that repeats itself until humanity finally understands what is happening beneath the surface of reality. And that pattern always begins the same way. Confusion, division, moral inversion, fear, and spiritual numbness. When truth becomes relative, when lies become normalized, and when people begin calling darkness light and light darkness, the stage is already being set. That is not speculation, that is written. Right now, many people feel spiritually exhausted without knowing why. They feel disconnected, anxious, restless, as if something important is missing. This is not accidental. Revelation describes a time when the world would be filled with noise, but empty of wisdom, full of information, but lacking understanding. A time when people would be constantly distracted, constantly entertained, yet deeply unsatisfied. Look around. Humanity has never had more technology, more comfort, more access to information, and yet anxiety, depression, and spiritual emptiness are at all-time highs. That alone should make you pause, because Revelation speaks of a generation that would be overwhelmed not by famine of food, but by a famine of truth. One of the most misunderstood aspects of Revelation is the idea that it is all about future destruction. In reality, much of it describes a spiritual condition that unfolds gradually. It speaks of hearts growing cold, of love fading, of people becoming lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of truth, of deception becoming so subtle that even those who consider themselves wise are misled. And the frightening part is not that evil becomes stronger, but that people slowly stop recognizing it. They adapt to it, they normalize it, they excuse it, until one day what once felt wrong feels ordinary. You see this today in how quickly people abandon values they once defended, how easily truth is reshaped to fit convenience, how often people silence their conscience just to belong. Revelation describes this as a kind of spiritual sleep, not physical sleep, but a numbness of the soul, a state where people are alive physically but disconnected spiritually, and this is why so many feel tired even after resting, empty even after success, lost even when surrounded by people. The soul knows something is wrong even when the mind tries to ignore it. The book also speaks of fear spreading across the earth, not just fear of war or disaster, but fear without a clear source, anxiety that comes from not knowing what to trust anymore, fear that arises when systems people depended on begin to shake, when institutions fail, when leaders disappoint, when promises collapse. This is not random. Revelation describes a shaking that exposes what was built on truth and what was built on illusion. And when illusion collapses, fear naturally follows. But here is what most people misunderstand. Revelation is not about God punishing humanity. It is about humanity experiencing the consequences of drifting away from truth. The suffering described is not inflicted arbitrarily. It is the natural result of disconnection. When people turn away from wisdom, humility, and conscience, chaos fills the gap. When pride replaces reverence, confusion replaces clarity. When truth is rejected, deception multiplies. You may have noticed how people today struggle to discern what is real. Opinions change daily. Narratives contradict each other. What was celebrated yesterday is condemned today. This instability creates mental and emotional exhaustion. Revelation warned of this long ago. It spoke of a time when deception would be so convincing that even the faithful would struggle to recognize it. Not because they are weak, but because deception would wear the mask of goodness, progress, and enlightenment. Another sign described is the rise of false peace, a sense that everything is under control when it is not. Comfort used as a distraction, entertainment used as anesthesia, noise used to silence reflection. People are encouraged to stay busy, stay distracted, stay stimulated, so they never stop to ask the deeper questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Where is this world going? Revelation warns that when humanity stops asking these questions, it becomes easy to guide, easy to manipulate, easy to divide. And division is one of the clearest signs. Not just political or cultural division, but division of hearts. Families divided, communities divided. People turning against one another over beliefs, opinions, and ideologies. Love growing cold, compassion becoming selective. Revelation describes this fragmentation as a spiritual symptom, not just a social one. When people lose connection with truth, they turn against each other because they no longer know who they are. Yet even in all this, Revelation is not a message of despair. It is a message of awakening. It reveals not only what will happen, but why it happens. And more importantly, it reveals that those who remain aware, grounded, and faithful do not need to live in fear. They are called to stand firm, to stay awake, to remain anchored while everything else shakes. You may feel right now that the world is moving towards something unknown. That sense is not imaginary. Many people across cultures, beliefs, and backgrounds feel it simultaneously. That collective intuition is not coincidence. Revelation speaks of a time when humanity would feel the weight of something approaching, even if they could not name it. A pressure in the spirit, a knowing without words, a sense that history is accelerating. And here is the most important part. The book never says to panic. It says to watch, to stay awake, to remain rooted, to not be deceived by fear or false hope, to strengthen the inner life, to guard the heart, to live with clarity, compassion, and courage. Because while the world may appear to be unraveling, something else is also happening quietly beneath the surface. A separation is taking place, not between nations or groups, but between those who live unconsciously and those who awaken. If you feel unsettled lately, if you feel like something is shifting, if you sense that the world you knew is fading, it does not mean you are losing your way. It may mean you are becoming aware. Revelation was written for moments like this, not to frighten, but to prepare. Not to predict dates, but to reveal patterns, not to condemn humanity, but to call it back to awareness. And this is only the beginning. The sign almost no one notices, but everyone feels. There is something happening inside people that does not appear on the news, cannot be measured by statistics, and is rarely spoken about openly. Yet almost everyone feels it. A strange heaviness, a quiet discomfort, a sense that something is off even when life appears normal on the surface. It is not anxiety in the usual sense. It is not sadness in the traditional way. It is something deeper, a subtle pressure in the soul that whispers, something is changing. This feeling did not appear by accident. It did not emerge because of technology, politics, or social change alone. It is something that was described long ago. The book of Revelation speaks of a time when humanity would feel unsettled, restless, unable to find peace, even in comfort. A time when people would feel a weight they could not explain, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Many today wake up tired even after sleeping. They feel mentally exhausted without doing anything physically demanding. Their thoughts race, their emotions fluctuate, and their patience feels thinner than ever. They try to distract themselves, to stay busy, to stay entertained. But the feeling does not go away. This is not weakness. This is not failure. This is awareness beginning to surface. Revelation describes a moment when the inner state of humanity would reflect the condition of the world, when confusion outside would mirror confusion inside, when people would sense instability without fully understanding its source. This is happening now. The world moves fast, but the soul moves slowly. And when the soul is forced to keep pace with a world that never rests, it begins to fracture. People today are not only tired, they are spiritually overwhelmed. They receive more information in a single day than previous generations received in years. Their minds are constantly stimulated, yet their hearts feel empty. They are surrounded by noise, but starved of meaning. This creates a quiet form of suffering that many cannot put into words. The book of Revelation speaks of this condition indirectly, describing a time when people would lose their sense of direction, when truth would be difficult to recognize, and when confusion would become normal. It warns that the greatest danger would not be destruction, but distraction, not persecution, but disorientation, not fear itself, but the slow numbing of awareness. You can see this everywhere. People argue constantly, yet rarely listen. They react instantly, but rarely reflect. They feel strongly, but think shallowly. Emotions are amplified while wisdom is ignored. This imbalance creates inner tension, and when tension goes unresolved for too long, it manifests as anxiety, anger, emptiness, or apathy. Another sign described in Revelation is the loss of inner stillness, a time when silence becomes uncomfortable, when people feel the need to fill every moment with sound, movement, or stimulation, because silence forces reflection, and reflection forces truth. Many avoid silence because, in silence, they would have to face what they have been running from. This is why so many feel drawn to constant distraction. Phones, media, noise, opinions, entertainment, all of it serves one purpose: to prevent stillness. But the soul was not designed to live this way. It needs space, it needs quiet, it needs meaning. And when it doesn't receive that, it begins to send signals in the form of discomfort, restlessness, or a deep sense of unease. Revelation also speaks of a time when people would feel divided within themselves, pulled in different directions, wanting peace but chasing chaos, wanting truth but avoiding introspection, wanting purpose but fearing change. This inner conflict is one of the clearest signs of spiritual imbalance, and it is widespread today. Yet within this discomfort lies something important, because discomfort is often the beginning of awakening. When the soul is no longer satisfied with surface-level living, it begins to search for something deeper. When distractions stop working, people start asking real questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What truly matters? These questions are not signs of crisis, they are signs of growth. Revelation describes this phase as a separation, not between nations or groups, but within individuals, a separation between the part that wants comfort and the part that seeks truth, between the desire to fit in and the desire to understand. between fear and awareness, and this is where many people are right now. Some feel lost because old beliefs no longer make sense. Some feel disconnected because the world no longer resonates with them. Some feel alone, even when surrounded by others. But this is not abandonment. It is transition, a shifting from unconscious living to conscious awareness. The danger is not in feeling this way. The danger is ignoring it. When people suppress this inner signal, they often become bitter, angry, or numb. But when they listen to it, something begins to change. They become more observant, more thoughtful, more selective about what they allow into their mind and life. Revelation does not describe this period as the end of humanity, but as a test of perception, a moment when people must choose whether to remain asleep or become aware, whether to follow noise or seek truth, whether to live unconsciously or intentionally. And perhaps the most important thing to understand is this: feeling unsettled right now does not mean something is wrong with you. It may mean something is finally becoming right. It may mean you are sensing what many ignore. It may mean you are becoming aware of the deeper current moving beneath the surface of the world. This awareness can feel uncomfortable at first. It can feel isolating, but it is also the beginning of clarity, and clarity, once it arrives, cannot be undone. Why time feels different and minds feel heavier than ever. There is a strange sensation many people are experiencing right now, and almost no one knows how to explain it. Time feels different. Days pass faster, weeks blur together, and yet inside the mind, everything feels heavy, slow, and overwhelming. People say things like, "I don't know where the time went," or it feels like everything is happening all at once. This is not imagination. This is not coincidence. Revelation speaks directly about this sensation, long before clocks, calendars, or modern life existed. It describes a period when time itself would feel compressed, not because hours literally change length, but because human perception changes. When events accelerate, when information overloads the mind, when the world constantly demands attention, the human nervous system begins to fracture under pressure. The soul feels rushed even when the body is still. The mind feels tired even when nothing physical has been done. And the heart feels restless because it senses something is unfolding faster than the mind can process. This is one of the clearest signs described in Revelation, a time of mental and emotional overload, a time when people would struggle to find silence, a time when the inner voice would be drowned out by noise. And this is exactly where humanity stands now. Look around. People are constantly connected, yet deeply disconnected. They scroll endlessly, consume endlessly, think endlessly, but rarely feel peace. The mind never rests, the soul never breathes, and because of that, fear begins to grow quietly in the background. Not always fear of something specific, but a general unease, a sense that something is wrong but hard to name. Revelation describes this as a spiritual pressure, not pressure from outside forces, but pressure created when the human spirit is pushed too far from its natural state. Humans were not created to live at this speed. They were not designed to process endless stimulation, endless conflict, endless comparison. When that happens, the soul begins to resist, and that resistance often shows up as anxiety, confusion, emotional exhaustion, or a feeling of emptiness. This is why so many people today feel lost even when they have everything. They followed the path they were told would bring happiness, yet something still feels missing. The reason is simple but profound. The world taught them how to survive, but not how to live. It taught them how to produce, but not how to be still. It taught them how to accumulate, but not how to understand themselves. Revelation warns about this exact condition. It speaks of a time when humanity would gain knowledge, but lose wisdom, when people would know many things but understand very little, when information would multiply, but truth would feel harder to find. That time is now. Another sign described is emotional numbness. People laugh, but the laughter feels shallow. They connect, but the connection feels temporary. They speak, but rarely feel heard. Many don't even realize they've become numb. They only know something feels off. This numbness is not weakness. It is a defense mechanism. The soul shuts down when overwhelmed for too long. But the danger is that when numbness becomes normal, people stop listening to their inner voice. And that is where revelation becomes extremely relevant, because it warns that the greatest danger of the final age is not destruction, war, or chaos, but deception through distraction. A world so loud that people no longer hear their own conscience. A culture so fast that reflection feels uncomfortable. A system so demanding that silence feels unnatural. This is why many people today feel an unexplained pull towards solitude, spirituality, or deeper meaning. They may not call it faith, they may not even believe in religion, but they feel the need to step back, to slow down, to disconnect from noise. This is not random. It is a response to spiritual overload. Revelation also speaks of a dividing line that becomes clearer in times like this. Not a physical line, but an internal one. On one side are those who continue to chase comfort, distraction, and approval. On the other side are those who begin to question everything, who ask why they feel the way they do, who sense that life must be more than survival and consumption. The dividing line is not about being good or bad, it is about being awake or asleep. Those who remain asleep are not evil. They are simply distracted. They follow routines, trends, fears, and narratives without stopping to examine them. They react emotionally to everything, but rarely reflect. And because of this, they are easily influenced, easily divided, easily controlled. Those who begin to awaken feel uncomfortable at first. They feel out of place. They feel different. They may even feel lonely, but they also begin to see patterns others miss. They notice how fear is used to manipulate, how outrage is used to distract, how noise is used to prevent clarity. And once you see that, you can never unsee it. Revelation describes this awakening as a form of illumination, not something dramatic or supernatural, but a gradual sharpening of awareness. A return to discernment, a remembering of something ancient within the human spirit. It is the realization that the external world reflects an internal condition and that true change begins from within. That is why so many people today are drawn to silence, meditation, prayer, reflection, or deep thought, even if they don't use those words. Their soul is seeking balance. Their spirit is trying to recalibrate in a world that has gone out of alignment. And here is something important. This process is not meant to make you afraid. It is meant to make you aware. Fear arises when people misunderstand what is happening. Awareness brings peace the moment you realize that the chaos around you is part of a larger pattern. You stop panicking. You stop reacting emotionally to every headline. You begin to observe instead of absorb. Revelation was written not to scare humanity, but to prepare those who are willing to see. To remind them that even in times of confusion, there is order beneath the surface. Even in moments of darkness, there is direction. And even when the world feels unstable, the inner foundation can remain firm. If you feel different lately, if you feel like you no longer fit into the noise of the world, if you feel called to slow down, reflect, and search for meaning, that is not a weakness. That is awareness awakening. The inner battle revealed in Scripture, what the Bible says about this moment. There is a reason why so many people today feel as if they are standing in the middle of an invisible war. A tension they cannot explain, a pull in two opposite directions, a sense that something inside them is being tested. This is not imagination. It is not psychological weakness. It is something the Bible spoke about clearly, long before this generation existed. Revelation does not describe only external events. It speaks deeply about an inner conflict, a battle that takes place in the human heart and mind, a struggle between awareness and deception, between truth and comfort, between the spirit and the flesh. And this battle becomes more intense as the world moves closer to moments of great transformation. The Apostle Paul described this inner struggle long before Revelation was written. In Romans 7:23 he said, "I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind." This verse alone explains why so many people today feel divided within themselves. One part wants peace, clarity, purpose. Another part is pulled toward distraction, fear, and short-term comfort. This conflict is not new. It is simply more visible now. Revelation expands on this idea by describing a time when deception becomes subtle, not obvious, not through violence but through confusion, not through force but through distraction. Revelation 12:9 says that the deceiver of the whole world leads people astray. Notice the wording, not attacks, not destroys, but deceives. Deception does not announce itself. It blends in. It feels normal. It feels reasonable. This is why so many people today do not realize they are spiritually exhausted. They think it is just stress. They think it is modern life. They think everyone feels this way. But Scripture shows that when people drift from truth, the soul becomes restless. Ecclesiastes 1:8 captures this perfectly. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. This verse could have been written today. Endless content, endless noise, endless stimulation, and still no satisfaction. Revelation also speaks of a time when people would struggle to endure sound teaching. Instead, they would seek messages that comfort them rather than challenge them. This is echoed in 2 Timothy 4:3-4, which says that people will turn away from the truth and gather teachers who say what they want to hear. This does not mean false teachers only appear in religious spaces. It means society begins to prefer comfort over truth, affirmation over growth, distraction over reflection. And this is where the inner battle becomes most intense. Because truth requires stillness. It requires honesty. It requires facing uncomfortable realities about oneself. But distraction offers escape. It offers noise instead of reflection. It offers comfort instead of transformation. Revelation warns that many will choose distraction because truth feels too demanding. Another powerful image in Revelation is the idea of spiritual blindness, not physical blindness, but the inability to perceive what is happening beneath the surface. Revelation 3:17 speaks of people who believe they are rich and lacking nothing, yet do not realize they are spiritually poor, blind, and naked. This is one of the most striking descriptions of modern society. People have access to everything, yet feel empty. They have information, yet lack understanding. They have freedom, yet feel trapped. This blindness is not punishment. It is the result of disconnection. When people stop listening to their inner voice, when they ignore conscience, when they drown reflection in noise, clarity fades. And when clarity fades, confusion takes its place. But Revelation does not leave people without hope. It repeatedly calls people to wake up. Not physically, but spiritually. Revelation 3:2 says, "Wake up and strengthen what remains." This is not a threat. It is an invitation to become conscious again, to slow down, to observe, to question, to return to awareness. This awakening often begins with discomfort, a feeling that something is wrong, a loss of interest in superficial things, a growing desire for depth. Many people misinterpret this stage as depression or dissatisfaction, when in reality it is the soul beginning to stir. It is the inner self realizing that it was made for more than survival. The Bible also speaks about fear spreading in the last days. but not the kind of fear people expect. Luke 21:26 says that people's hearts will fail them because of fear and expectation of what is coming on the world. Notice that it says fear of expectation, not fear of events. This means anxiety about the future, uncertainty, and constant anticipation of disaster. That describes the emotional climate of today perfectly. People are not just afraid of what is happening, they are afraid of what might happen. They live in constant anticipation, constantly bracing for the next crisis. This keeps the nervous system in a permanent state of tension, and when people live in fear long enough, they become easier to influence, easier to control, easier to divide. This is why Revelation emphasizes endurance and clarity. It does not tell people to panic or withdraw from the world. It tells them to remain grounded, awake, and steady, to not lose themselves in fear, to not allow confusion to dominate their thinking. Another key theme in Revelation is discernment, the ability to see beyond appearances, to recognize patterns, to question narratives, to listen not only to what is said, but to what is avoided. Discernment is described as a form of spiritual maturity. It grows when people slow down, reflect, and refuse to react impulsively. This is why many people today feel drawn to silence, to nature, to prayer, to introspection, even if they cannot explain why. Their soul is seeking stability in a world that feels increasingly unstable. Their spirit is searching for grounding in a time of constant motion. And perhaps the most important message of Revelation in this moment is this: you were not meant to live in fear. You were not meant to be overwhelmed. You were not meant to feel lost. The chaos around you does not mean chaos within you is inevitable. The world may shake, but your inner foundation does not have to. Those who recognize what is happening now are not chosen in a mystical sense. They are simply awake. They are paying attention. They are listening inwardly. They are allowing awareness to grow instead of numbing themselves. And this awareness changes everything, because once you see the pattern, you stop being controlled by it. Once you understand the nature of the struggle, you stop fearing it. Once you realize that Revelation is not about destruction, but about revelation, the fear begins to dissolve. The separation. Why some feel alone while others remain asleep. There comes a moment in every great transformation when separation begins to occur. Not the kind of separation people usually imagine, not physical distance or isolation by force, but an inner divergence. A quiet dividing line forms between those who continue to move with the current and those who begin to feel pulled in another direction. This separation is one of the most misunderstood elements of Revelation, yet it is one of the most important. The Bible does not describe this separation as punishment. It describes it as preparation. Many people today feel increasingly disconnected from others, even from those they once felt close to. Conversations feel shallow, interests no longer align, relationships that once felt natural now feel forced. And often this happens without conflict, without arguments, without clear reasons. People simply drift apart. This can feel painful, confusing, even lonely, but Revelation reveals something profound about this stage. Separation is not rejection, it is refinement. In Revelation, there is repeated language about being set apart, about standing firm while others fall away, about remaining awake while others sleep. This does not mean superiority, it means alignment. When someone begins to see more clearly, they naturally stop resonating with what no longer reflects their inner state, and this creates distance, not because of judgment, but because of difference in awareness. Jesus himself spoke of this when he said that in the last days, even families would feel divided, not by hatred, but by understanding. One would see clearly, another would not. One would feel the weight of meaning, another would chase comfort. This is not cruelty, it is consequence. When consciousness expands, it cannot pretend to be smaller again. Many people who are awakening feel a deep sense of loneliness, even when surrounded by others. This is because their inner world has changed faster than their external environment. They are asking questions others are not asking. They are feeling things others are ignoring. They are sensing shifts others cannot yet perceive. And this can be deeply isolating. But revelation shows that this isolation has a purpose. It is in separation that clarity grows. It is in stillness that perception sharpens. It is in solitude that the noise of the world finally quiets enough for truth to be heard. Throughout Scripture, moments of transformation always came after withdrawal. Moses in the desert, Jesus in the wilderness, Elijah in silence. Not as punishment, but as preparation. This is why so many people today feel drawn to solitude, to reflection, to pulling back from social noise. It is not depression. It is not failure. It is recalibration. The soul is shedding what no longer serves it. Revelation also speaks of a refining process. Fire is often used as a symbol, not of destruction, but of purification. Fire removes what is unnecessary. It reveals what is real. In the same way, the pressures people feel today are revealing what is authentic and what is artificial in their lives. Superficial desires lose power, shallow relationships fade, false goals collapse, and what remains is what truly matters. This can feel unsettling because the human mind prefers stability. It wants things to stay the same. But growth never happens in comfort. Growth happens when illusions fall away. Another powerful theme in Revelation is the idea of endurance, not passive endurance, but conscious perseverance, the kind that comes from understanding what is happening and choosing not to be swept away by fear. This endurance is not about surviving external chaos. It is about maintaining inner clarity while the world shakes. Many people today feel emotionally tired, not because they are weak, but because they are resisting something deep inside. They feel the urge to slow down, to change direction, to live differently, but fear holds them back. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of standing alone, fear of letting go of what feels familiar. But Revelation reminds us that transformation always feels uncomfortable at first. The old must loosen its grip before the new can take shape. And this is happening now on a massive scale. There is also something else happening that few people talk about. Sensitivity is increasing. People feel emotions more intensely. They are more affected by energy, atmosphere, and the emotional states of others. Crowded places feel overwhelming. Noise feels heavier. Negativity feels draining. This is not weakness. It is heightened awareness. Revelation hints at this when it speaks of heightened perception in the last days. Those who are awake become more sensitive to truth and falsehood. They sense when something is off. They feel when words do not match intentions. They pick up on what is unspoken. This sensitivity can feel like a burden, but it is actually a sign of alignment. However, this sensitivity also requires boundaries. Without boundaries, empathy becomes exhaustion. Without grounding, awareness becomes anxiety. That is why the awakening process often comes with a strong urge to simplify life, to remove excess, to reduce noise, to protect mental and emotional space. And here is something crucial. This process cannot be rushed. Revelation does not describe instant transformation. It describes seasons, phases, gradual unfolding. Each person awakens at their own pace, according to their own readiness. Some will resist until the very end. Some will awaken quietly. Some will awaken through hardship. Others through reflection. There is no single path, but the direction is the same, from unconscious living to conscious presence. If you feel like you no longer fit into the world the way you once did, that does not mean something is wrong with you. It may mean you are outgrowing an old version of yourself. It may mean your values are shifting. It may mean you are beginning to live more intentionally. And that is exactly what Revelation describes. Not the end of humanity, but the end of illusion. Judgment as revelation, when truth can no longer be hidden. One of the most misunderstood words in the entire book of Revelation is the word judgment. For many, it immediately evokes fear, punishment, or condemnation, but when you read Scripture carefully, you realize something profound. Judgment in the biblical sense is not primarily about punishment. It is about exposure. It is about truth coming to light. It is about what was hidden being revealed. The word itself implies separation, clarity, discernment. And this is exactly what many people are experiencing now, even if they do not recognize it as such. Jesus said in John 3:19, "This is the judgment, that light has come into the world, but people loved darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil." Notice what he says. Judgment is not something imposed from outside. It is a reaction to light. When truth appears, everything that was hidden becomes visible, and not everyone is ready for that. This is why so many people today feel uncomfortable without knowing why. They feel exposed, not externally but internally. Old habits no longer feel harmless. Old beliefs begin to feel hollow. Patterns that once felt normal now feel heavy. This is not guilt, it is awareness. Revelation describes this moment as a time when every eye will see, Revelation 1:7. Not only physically but spiritually, a time when people can no longer hide from themselves, when excuses lose power, when self-deception becomes harder to maintain. This is why many people feel as though they are being confronted by their own thoughts, emotions, and choices more intensely than ever before. Silence becomes uncomfortable, reflection becomes unavoidable. The distractions that once worked no longer bring relief. This is judgment in its truest form, not condemnation, but confrontation with truth. The Bible repeatedly emphasizes that God does not expose to destroy, but to restore. In Hebrews 4:12, it says that the word is living and active, sharper than any double-edged sword, able to divide soul and spirit, thoughts and intentions of the heart. That division is not meant to harm, it is meant to heal. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. This is why Revelation speaks of people reacting in different ways to the same moment. Some grow angry, some grow fearful, some grow defensive. Others grow humble, reflective, and calm. The difference is not what is happening externally, but what is happening internally. Those who resist truth experience it as pressure. Those who accept truth experience it as clarity. This is also why so many people feel as if life itself is forcing them to slow down, reevaluate, and confront unresolved issues. Relationships break down, careers lose meaning, old goals no longer satisfy. These are not random disruptions. They are invitations to realign. Revelation shows this pattern clearly. Before renewal comes exposure. Before peace comes awareness. Before healing comes honesty. There is a powerful passage in Revelation 3:15-16, where it says that being lukewarm, neither cold nor hot, is more dangerous than being fully one or the other. This speaks directly to spiritual numbness, indifference, going through life on autopilot, avoiding depth, avoiding commitment, avoiding truth. In many ways, the world today is experiencing the discomfort of waking up from that numbness. People feel emotionally raw. Old wounds resurface. Suppressed emotions rise to the surface. This can feel chaotic, but it is actually a form of cleansing. Just as the body releases toxins during healing, the mind and spirit release buried patterns during awakening. And this is where fear often enters. When people do not understand what is happening inside them, they assume something is wrong. They label the discomfort as anxiety or failure, but Scripture shows that this phase is often a turning point. a moment where one must choose whether to resist or to grow. James 1:2-4 speaks directly to this. Trials produce endurance, and endurance leads to maturity. Not comfort, not ease, maturity. This is why Revelation does not promise a painless awakening. It promises clarity, it promises truth, it promises that what is real will remain and what is false will fall away. And this includes identities people have built that are not aligned with who they truly are. Roles they play, masks they wear, beliefs they inherited without questioning. All of this begins to loosen. Some experience this as loss, others experience it as liberation. What makes this time so intense is that the process is happening collectively. Many people are waking up at once, each at their own pace. And when large numbers of people undergo internal change, the world itself feels unstable. Systems shake, beliefs clash, old structures struggle to hold. But Revelation assures that this instability is not meaningless. It is transitional. The purpose of judgment is not destruction. It is discernment. It reveals what is aligned with truth and what is built on illusion. It shows what can endure and what cannot. And it invites each person to choose awareness over avoidance. If you feel like life is forcing you to look inward, if you feel like excuses no longer work, if you feel called to live more consciously, more honestly, more intentionally, that is not punishment. That is alignment. And the more you resist it, the heavier it feels. The more you accept it, the lighter you become. And so everything leads back to this moment, not a moment on a calendar, not a prophecy with a date, but a moment of awareness. A moment when a person realizes that what is happening in the world is also happening within them, that the confusion, the pressure, the restlessness, the sense of something shifting, none of it is random. Revelation was never meant to be read as a prediction of catastrophe, but as a mirror held up to humanity, a mirror that shows what happens when truth is ignored, when conscience is silenced, and when people drift too far from their inner center. And at the same time, it shows what happens when awareness returns. What many are feeling now is not the end of the world. It is the end of illusion. It is the collapse of false certainty. It is the slow removal of what no longer serves growth, clarity, or truth. And while that process can feel uncomfortable, even painful at times, it carries within it something powerful, the opportunity to awaken. The Bible never says that darkness wins. It says that light reveals, and revelation, by its very nature, is not destruction. It is disclosure. It is the moment when what was hidden becomes visible, when confusion gives way to understanding, when fear gives way to discernment. If you feel unsettled, it does not mean you are lost. It may mean you are becoming aware. If you feel different from those around you, it does not mean you are disconnected. It may mean you are beginning to see more clearly. If you feel drawn to silence, reflection, or meaning, it does not mean you are retreating from life. It may mean you are finally stepping into it consciously. The world may feel loud, chaotic, and uncertain. But clarity is not found in noise. It is found in stillness. It is found in observation. It is found in the quiet understanding that not everything happening around you needs your fear or your reaction. Revelation does not end in chaos. It ends in clarity. It ends in restoration. It ends with the reminder that light is not overcome by darkness. Darkness is revealed by light. And perhaps that is the most important message of all. What is happening right now was written long ago, not to frighten you, but to remind you that you are not lost in this moment. You are witnessing a turning point, and how you respond to it, with fear or awareness, resistance or understanding, will shape how you experience what comes next. Stay aware, stay grounded, and most of all, stay conscious.